All right, so let's take a look at how we can create some hair for our character. I tend to do this early on, even if the hair gets deleted later, just because it adds so much personality to the model. So the way I generally make cartoon hair is I'll create it out of a series of curves, and then I will convert it to a mesh just by right-clicking. So let's take a look at how to do that. So I'm going to hit Shift A, and I'm going to go to curve, and I'm going to go to circle here. And what I'd like to do is just kind of rotate it to the front view so I can edit the curve better later on. So I'm going to hit R for rotate, and then X to access the X axis, and then 9, 0 to rotate it 90 degrees on the X axis. Then I'm going to press enter. I'm just going to move it down here for a second. Let's scale this down a little bit. Now I'm going to hit Control A, and I'm going to apply a scale transform. The next thing I want to do is create a strand around the head itself. So let's say this character is like a punk rock character, and I want all the hair strands to be roughly the same. So I'm going to hit Control A again, Shift A rather, and I'm going to go to curve, and I'm going to add a path. And I'm going to move this path up here. I'm going to scale this down just a little bit and move it off to the side. Now I'm placing this point here because I want it to be at the root of the head. So let's say the first hair kind of flicks down on the face. Actually, let me scale this down a bit more. And then I'm going to hit Control A, and I'm going to just scale that out. I want to make sure that my scale is zeroed out. Otherwise, it's going to give you some weird scaling issues later when we apply the next step, which is actually making it look like the geometry. So what I want to do next is I'd like to select this circle as the shape of this hair strand. Now what we can do is over here in our objects tab, you could scroll down here, you could see there's a geometry section. If you open that up and you go to bevel and you select the object, you can actually select this circle, and you can see that it added it gave it a little bit of geometric dimension. If you hit fill caps, you could see it fills it. I tend to fill the caps. You could also, leave it open and then just weld those verts together. It's up to you. So let's go ahead and hit tab and go to edit mode. And what you can see now is you can hit G, and you can start to play with this curve like this. Now, if you'd like I said, I tend to just kind of let the hair kind of sit flat here. If there's too many curves, you can actually select a curve, right click, hit X and just press delete. And you can dissolve that vertice. So now you're just playing with these. Now, if you want the hair to come to more of a point at the end, you just hit Alt and S, not S, but Alt and S, and then you can scale that tip down. So something like that. So you can see here we get a pretty cool option. Now, one thing that could be a potential issue later on is when I go back into object mode. So I'm going to tab over to object mode. Notice that my pivot point shifted off the object itself. So what you can do is just go to object, set origin, origin to geometry, and then that'll set that back on there for you. And as I mentioned before, what's cool is I still have this curve here that's adjusting the shape. So like if I go here and I tab over to edit mode on this, I could do things like I can say, okay, well, there's that edge there. I want to right click and I want to go to set handle type. And if I do vector, for example, I can grab these, hit G. Oops, let's make sure I do that again. Right click, let's see, set handle type vector. Did that work? Doesn't seem it wants to. Maybe with, maybe I have to have that selected. Let's see. There we go. Yeah, you have to have the actual handle selected. So with this selected, I can actually, let me kind of zoom. I can give it more of like a nice little pinch at the top. And if I want the hair to sit flat across the head, I can grab this bottom one and just kind of pull it up a little bit. Let's kind of even these guys out too. And scale them a little bit on the Y so they're lined up. You know, and that might be too extreme for you too, that curve. So something like that. And then what you could do is select this, then hit Shift D, duplicate it again, and you can essentially just rotate it, right? So let's say I rotate it this way, and I want to give them more of like these, kind of like a spiky punk rock. mohawk, something like that. And I can tab over to edit mode. Just kind of play with this particular one, and it won't affect the other one. What I would tend to do is inside of like, even in here now, it's got some pretty good, here being Blender, it has some pretty good painting tools. Like you can actually do like fit PBR textures. I might even go in here and just sort of paint out a mohawk, and we'll get to like texturing this thing. Let's go back to object mode here, and I'm actually going to bring this down a little bit into the head. So something like that. And you can also like scale these up too. So let's actually go object, set origin to geometry. Shift D that a couple more times. Scale it down. It's got this dinosaur fin thing going on. So instead of that like Mr. T mohawk, we've got this thing. I kind of like the idea. I mean, you could just have fun with it. Like I like the idea of maybe they kind of start to droop and fall a little bit. Like he's been sort of around all day, and his hair, that gel or whatever in his hair is starting to not stick as well. Just kind of giving him personality. And even you could rig these, which is kind of cool. So something like this, kind of falling on top, and there's something really cool about just playing with these curves. So you might be like, well, okay, well, what do I do? You know, with like, okay, so I'm happy with this, right? So let's hit Shift D. Well, you can actually just right click on it. You can go to convert to mesh, and now what you have is when I go to edit mode here, you can actually have geometry to play with. So I can select faces. Let's hit W to grab our selection mode. You can see I can select these faces. I can unwrap it. If you need to, if you hit 2 for edge mode, you hold Alt, you can select the edge. Hit X, you can dissolve those vertices, or you can dissolve that edge. You know, cleaning up your geometry if you want to get rid of some. You know, like Alt click each one of these. Alt Shift click will select multiple ones. You know, if you want to make like a really low res model. So anyway, that's my way of creating cartoon hair.